Hey, thanks for joining me again. Sorry it's taken so long to get a video out. Just been crazy with stuff going on. You know, we had our vacation, which was amazing, and I plan on doing a video of that sometime here. And got back and just had a lot of busy stuff going on. My wife's 50th birthday and some other things. And then she had a surgery that had to be taken care of. And then one thing I did do is I got this 3D printed Luke Skywalker head for my Polydata Luke Skywalker model kit. I've never been happy with the way his face looked on this kit, so I bought this 3D printed head and cut the old head off and painted and put the new head on, and here's the finished Luke Skywalker with the new head. But life seems to finally be getting back to normal. So here we are working finally on my Bandai B-Wing. And here we've got the parts that I'm starting on for the cockpit. We got the underside here with the guns and some little pieces that go on here. And then we've got the cockpit interior, which fits on top of this lower section. I'm planning on putting some lights in and around, not a lot, but a little bit of lights in and around the cockpit just to give it some life. And here we have the back wall of the cockpit, which just fits right together with the front section. And there's the cockpit. And I'm going to have to run stuff out the back. And I want to put a few on the back wall and some around the console. So I'm going to spray it with some primer here, and I've got it sprayed with some Tamiya white primer, and looks pretty good. And I'm going to paint some of these lights around here and only have some of them up in here in front and on the back console actually illuminated with some fiber optic. So I'm going to start out here with a 0.3 millimeter drill bit and start drilling some holes, and I'm going to do a couple in the front of the console of the cockpit here to start with. And I've got two here in the front console. I've got a couple holes drilled on this side console over here, and then I've drilled some holes in the back wall over here. I have one here. I have a red one up in the top. So not a lot of lights, maybe half a dozen, 7. So I'm starting out with some neutral gray here, and that's what I'm going to airbrush the cockpit with, and its base color is going to be neutral gray. And again, the back wall will also be neutral gray. And so I've run some fiber optics through here, 0.25 millimeter fiber optics, just to make sure my holes are drilled and the fibers fit through there okay. And on this back wall section here, you can see I had to cut a groove so that this red fiber can lay flush so that this entire section can rotate within the body of the B-Wing. And I'm planning on using a 3mm LED, and I got the idea of using a coffee stir stick, which just fits nice and snug over a 3mm LED, and essentially I made my own light emitter. And then the fibers just fit right inside the little section of the coffee stir stick. And then you can kick the LED light on, and voila, I've got my fibers lit up. Other than the red one up on the top right, they're all white at the moment. I plan on coloring 2 of them. So I'm going to pull the fibers out for now to finish painting the cockpit. And I'm going to use some XF19 here, which is a sky gray from Tamiya, and just do a little dry brushing around the cockpit to pick up some of the highlights. And I decided I'm going to drill out the center of the guns at the front of the ship to make them look more like actual guns, and you can see how that turned out here. And I'm using some metallic gray on the back of the wall here, Tamiya metallic gray, to give it a little bit of a metal look. And here we've got it with some dark wash, painted some of the lights on it. I've done some rust washes around it, and it's primarily about the way I want it to look. Done a little metallic paint to the bottom guns and some rust and some dirt to dirty them up a little bit and to make them look like they're worn. And you can see here how the cockpit is pretty much looking at this point. Of course, might add extra details later. So this is the outside of the cockpit and the back with the turbine, and these pieces go around the turbine. So this is the nose of the cockpit. You know, it just fits over like that. We got a little nose piece here that goes on the very front, right there. A little piece that goes on the side, and then of course we have the canopy frame for the cockpit, which just fits over there. So we've got these four pieces that go around this back section here, and I've trimmed all the excess flashing off of them, and I'm just going to go around and start putting them in position here. And then these other pieces are going to go around, and I'm going to want to paint the inside, and of course I need to paint this white area here, and then also I'm going to need to paint the turbine, but you got this section that goes over the top, which will make it difficult to paint the turbine. So right now I'm going to focus on all the white parts. So I've got these three sections here that I just sprayed with some primer and added that little nose piece to the front of the cockpit. So those are all primed and ready, as well as this internal part that goes in the rear. And I've also puttied this section that goes over the top of that because I don't want to have any seams in the back. So you can see here that I've puttied the seams. So I've gone and I've sanded down all the seams at this point, as you can see there, and I rescribed the little bit of those lines at the top and bottom. And now I've given it a shot of my Tamiya AS20 white paint, and now that's ready to just fit over this back section. But I still need to finish painting this whole back section. So I've got it primed and ready to go, and now I've given it a coat of black spray paint, just generic black spray paint. And now I've got this metallic nickel paint. It's like a rub and buff type of paint, and I'm just going to do this whole back section here in this metallic nickel rub and buff paint. I kind of like how it looks a little more metallic rather than just gray. I especially like the way it looks for the turbine. So there, we've got it on there painted. I'm going to add some more weathering and detailing to this as well. And there's the turbine. Looks, definitely more metallic. I'm going to go over this with a little bit of Vallejo dark wash, a rust wash, just to add a little bit of weathering around it. And I've done a little bit of the rust wash around the turbine area. And then I've also done a black wash in here along with some of the rust wash. You can see some of that there. And now I've given all of these a shot of my AS20 Insignia white paint. And the rear section is ready to be assembled. So we've got this piece here that just fits over like so, and then we have this cone cap that just fits over into place as well, and there we have the rear section with the turbine back there. And at this point too, I'm also going to do a little bit of painting on the interior of this cone, because there should be some dark area from the heat from that turbine. So I'm going to use my Tamiya pastel oil stain, and I'm just going to rub a bunch of it on the interior there just to kind of darken it up a little bit around the outer edges, just to make it look like there's been some heat and wear from that turbine inside there. So at this point, I need to put an LED inside this back so that the fibers will go into the LED and light up the cockpit and console. And then I'm going to make it so that this can all be pushed together and it'll all be housed in the back section here. So right in here is where the LED will be housed for the fiber optics. And I'm going to have my tape run around the circumference of the cockpit. So first I'm going to do a little notch in the back section here for the fibers to run through, because when the back attaches it'll pinch those fibers. So I've made a 3mm LED with some really thin 30 gauge wire here, and I've got my little cut piece of coffee stir stick, and I've got my little LED emitter here to light up my fiber optics. And I got this liquid electrical tape, which is pretty cool stuff, that I'm going to use around this back part, which will seal the coffee stir stick, and also, because it's black, cover up any bleeding light. And you can see here that there's no light except for inside the coffee stir stick. And you can see here, test that it's lighting up the fiber optics, no problem. So I've got my two fiber optics in the front console. One of them I want to be blue. So I got a blue Sharpie, and I'm just going to carefully color the tip of this fiber with blue from the blue Sharpie so that it'll appear blue. And then I'm going to use the liquid electrical tape to glue the fibers in place, and it works great for that as well as a light blocker. And you can see it there working. So I've got these other two fibers in the side console. I'm going to make one of those yellow, because Star Wars tends to be blue, white, yellow, and red. And there you can see the white and yellow lights. So I've taken the front fibers and the fibers from the side console and run them through a hole that I drilled in the back wall, so they come out the back of the cockpit. And you can see them here, and I've got my notch, and I've done one on both sides so that the fibers will rest inside the notch, so that when the rear of the cockpit is put in place, it will not pinch the fibers. So I've grouped them all together, and I've put them inside a little piece of shrink tube here, and there's all the ends. And if I take my little emitter here and put it over the ends, just to double check to make sure that all my lights are working, and all my lights are indeed working. So this is the body, and here's my cockpit in the body, which needs to rotate. So I've marked off on the top here where I want my two copper tape strips, which will also go inside so they make contact to light up the cockpit. So I drilled out a couple holes here in the middle of where my copper tape is going to go, so that my wires can come up through there and be soldered to the copper tape. So I've got my copper tape here, and I'm just going to apply it to the kit and just wrap it all the way around. And I've done it with both pieces of tape, as you can see here. One will be ground and one will be the positive lead. And so I've got my positive wire here, and I'm just gonna feed it through the hole and pull it through. And I got both of them pulled through now. And then my little LED emitter will just go over the fibers here and shine into them to light up the cockpit. It's a nice snug fit. And then I've got the back section here that I will just slide over, and those wires go right inside my little notch there. And the back just seals it up. Then I'm going to cut the wires down and solder them to the tape. So I've trimmed the wires down, and I just have the edge of them coming up through here so I can solder them to the tape. And both of them are soldered, and you can see here when I add a ground and positive tape to the cockpit, it does make contact, and the lights do in fact light up. So moving on now, I'm going to apply some of the decals to the outer portion of the cockpit. I'm going to use some Microsol microset here applied to the kit, and then I'm going to take the decal which has been soaking in water and just slide it off. And the microset is a lot better for adhering decals to a model kit. And then I'm going to apply the rest of them around the rear portion here. And I've got all of them applied. You see little ripples there, but it hasn't dried yet. It will seal and dry later. And I've also applied these two little decals to the nose cone. So now I'm going to do some black wash to like the little indentation ring areas around the rear portion of the cockpit here. And I've gone around the whole unit and done a wash in there. And I've also done a black wash around these panels and rivet holes on the nose cone of the cockpit as well. And a little bit on that little tip of the nose. Now I'm going to take some Tamiya neutral gray paint and I'm going to airbrush my cockpit canopy. And continuing on with the neutral gray, I'm going to add a little bit of streaking and weathering to the rear portion of the cockpit here. And then also do some more streaking and weathering to the nose cone of the cockpit. Then it's time to actually attach the canopy to the cockpit nose cone. And then I'm going to use some sky gray here again, Tamiya, and do a light dry brush around this rear portion just to do some bit of highlights to it. And then I'm going to do the popular Star Wars yellow that they do on most all their ships, which is, honestly, I don't know what the yellow is supposed to be, but they all have it, so I'm going to go around and I've done some yellowing to the nose cone here, as you can see. A little chipping on the canopy with some sky gray. And then I've also done some more of the yellow and rust around the rear portion here. I've also done some flicking of some black specks, so there's like little dirty spots all around. And now it's time to actually finally attach the rear to the cockpit here and the nose cone. And there was also this little piece here that's like a hose that's supposed to stick out the bottom. So I've attached that so you can see the hose or wire coming out the bottom there. And here we have the whole cockpit housing assembled and ready and painted as far as I'm going to go for now. I might add a little more detail later. Actually, I'll scuff up the decals a little bit and weather those. But for now, here's my ground and positive leads of copper tape, and I just attach it, and you can see that the cockpit lights up whenever it touches. So when it's inside the main body, it'll constantly have contact, and it'll be able to rotate 360 degrees within the body and always be lit. So I hope you enjoyed this build of the cockpit, and until next time, I'll see you later. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you like watching my videos, please feel free to give them a like. And so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, click subscribe.